Well, good morning. My role is to manage the Forest Growers Levy Trust Research Investment portfolio that we have. And as Jeff's indicated, about 2/3 of that levy is going into research. So this role does involve making recommendations up to the Levy Trust and then organising and managing the delivery of that research program through the industry's owned R&D management company, Forest Growers Research Limited. So what I want to do this morning is just tell you something about how we manage that program, the research program itself, and how we do that in a levy environment. And there have been big changes following the introduction of the levy, and we've had to organise ourselves quite a bit differently to the way we did in the past. And importantly, putting more effort into communicating the outcomes of the research program to our industry and to our wider stakeholders. I think, as Jeff mentioned, Phil Taylor has done a sterling job chairing the research committee, and Phil puts in his apologies. He would love to be here, but unfortunately he has his masters from the US over here this week, so he's unable to be here. So the collective investment in forest growing research in New Zealand is about $30 million annually, and the programs we support add up to around $20 million a year. Now, that's not 20 million coming from the levy, but it's 20 million that's attracted through a variety of leveraging sources that Jeff showed in one of his slides. And on top of that, and it is a hard number to quantify, it's actually the very significant in-kind assistance we get from our industry members. And that's the land they make available for trials, their staff time, and attending various steering group meetings, and assistance they provide with contractors and many other ways. So that is a significant input that our industry people make to our programs. In this current year, the levy are putting in $5.5 million into the research program, and we work as hard as we can to leverage that up so that we can turn $5.5 million into a considerably bigger number, and we do that. I think an issue, and you will definitely hear about it over the next couple of days, an issue for New Zealand is probably the relatively low investment that is made into R&D by industry. And the government is sending us some pretty clear messages that they're looking to the primary sector overall, to contribute more. And that's certainly a challenge for our industry, and particularly an industry that does have long growing cycles and a wide and diverse range of stakeholders. It is important with the levy and this investment that the levy is making is that there is a plan, there is some direction, there is a roadmap, and last year the forest growers got together with the support of Forest Owners Association, Farm Forestry, Levy Trust, and developed a vision for 2050. And a copy of that roadmap that came out of that strategic exercise is in with your handouts. But the roadmap was for the next 30 years through to 2050, and identified a vision and three key influences that the sector will need to deal with. And the three big influences that were identified through this exercise were changes that are resulting from environmental changes, and particularly the impact of pests and pathogens on our forests. I think anyone who's travelled overseas in recent times, they will come back with stories about issues they are seeing that they can pretty much directly relate to climate change. Society's expectations of us as forest owners are changing. The days of hiding out in the back blocks and doing what we want in our forests, you can't do that anymore. People can see almost in real time what you are doing, either by satellite or by drones, and with the push of a button, the whole world knows about it, and that impacts on our industry's reputation, and it impacts on New Zealand's reputation as a trader and a producer of environmentally sound produce products. And of course, technology will continue to drive change. I think we're seeing that. It was mentioned yesterday that only a few years ago, we hardly knew what the word LiDAR was. And now, through the work that's been done through this program, pretty much most forest owners are very familiar and have incorporated that technology into their forest. And that's an example of technology that has moved incredibly quickly. And I think we can just expect the pace of change. It won't slow down, it'll accelerate. And we'll need to deal with that. The one thing, which is very relevant to what we're here to do today, that strategy identified that science and having a strong science innovation sector will be a critical factor in dealing with those changes and those challenges that the sector will need to deal with going forwards. So we, under the guidance of the Forest Research Committee, we then have, over the last 12 months, have developed a science and innovation strategy, and that has been released, and it's now, again, it's in the green bag with some of the other handouts. So that's hot off the press, but that has been developed with a good degree of consultation across the industry, and has been signed off by our industry leadership bodies. So the science innovation strategy, it does build on the strategic roadmap that was developed first, and it really has probably identified that going forwards we need to be more agile, we need to be more future focused, and there's probably there will be and three key drivers that were sort of identified were forest ownership will continue to change. And probably with potential for non-traditional forestry investors to come into forestry. Those who had invested in other less preferred industries, perhaps the petrochemical industry or other sectors that are not seen to have such a great record for investors, we might well see more of that investment moving into the forestry sector, which is seen to be green and more sustainable for the future, and a good fit with a low carbon, a zero carbon economy. Markets, we can expect markets will change without doubt. We are going to see, I think we are seeing an increase in wood, in construction and in building, albeit slowly, but that will certainly accelerate with a move to a low carbon economy. And we will certainly see increased interest in the circular bioeconomy, and forestry is extremely well placed for that. And the third thing will be that our forests will need to be more resilient than they are, and we're going to probably have to move faster to keep up with some of the threats, and that will require new technologies, new ways of keeping ahead, and ensuring that our forests are resilient to some of these future threats that we see coming from different climate, more intense climatic patterns, warmer, more humid weather, more incidence of disease. And of course the world is becoming a much smaller place. It's so much easier for stuff to get here and get here more quickly than it has in the past. The strategy, the strategy I really identified three core themes, and you can read about that in the strategy, but we said there's the three themes are ensuring the profitability and sustainability of our core plantation forestry resource, and the view of the Forest Research Committee was that about 50 to 60% of the levy should go into supporting those activities. The other area, the second theme, was around other tree species, contingency species, and different forest systems to deal with future challenges that will come along. You know, we've seen the impact of more intense storm events in places like the East Coast, and the question does come up there, you know, is our existing forest model, is that still appropriate for sites that have those limitations? So we see the view of the committee was about 10 to 20% of the levy investment should go into that area, and that is definitely a move from where we're currently at. And then protecting and future-proofing our industry and growing community sport. The whole licence to operate area, there was concern that we're not probably putting enough effort into that space, and we have some challenges at the moment on a number of fronts. So the view was that somewhere around about 25 to 30% of the levy should go into those areas. So what we have done within each of those themes, we've identified the main activities, looked at where the funding is coming from, and then used that to identify the priority areas for investment by the Levy Trust. So there are areas that the Levy Trust is not considered to be high priority, and it might well be that it's because there's significant funding going into that area from other sources, and particularly government and other investors. So as a result of that strategy, we will see some changes. The research committee will use this to guide its allocation. So we will see some changes to the allocation of funding within those programs as a result of that strategy. If we look at the existing research program at the moment, the Trust does support an extensive range of research activities, and they do extend right across the forestry value chain, from advanced biotechnologies right through to harvesting and supply chain logistics. There is not a lot of effort going in beyond the forest gate, or what I'd call beyond the forestry supply chain. But within our specialty wood products program, we have identified that a real barrier to getting people to plant some of these other species is the lack of confidence in markets. So there is a specialty wood products program, and that program is looking at how can we produce new wood products from those other species. So you can see there the range of activity. Of course, the biggest area of investment is the big green bit there, which is in the area of productivity and sustainability of our forest crop. The second biggest one, the orange, is in the whole forest protection area, protecting our estate from diseases and pests. The grey is looking at automation and robotics, particularly in our harvesting supply chain. We think there's opportunities to do that earlier in the supply chain as well, but that program is currently focused in the harvesting area. And then in the genetics and deployment area, the blue, that program is around getting our improved genetics that come out of the breeding programs, the radiata pine breeding programs, delivering those out into our forests much quicker than we currently are, because dealing with these future challenges of pests and climate change, we will have to be able to get that material out into our forests quicker and more rapidly. Mike's nodding his head. So the strategy, as I said, the strategy that we've developed, the new science innovation strategy, will result. We will see some changes in that portfolio. One of the challenges, I suppose, and I don't think anyone would say they've got the answers to this one, but how do you communicate with such a broad range of stakeholders? We estimate there's something like 14,000 forest owners out there. If you take all those people that have got shares or part shares in various partnership schemes around the place as part of their superannuation, it grows significantly. And of course, as New Zealanders paying into the New Zealand Super Fund, you're all indirectly owners of forest through the New Zealand Super Fund investment in timber in Kaingaroa timberlands. So there are a lot of owners of forest out there, and they range in size from more than 250,000 hectares down to 5 hectares. So how do you communicate a large, complex research program like this to that broad range of stakeholders? And those forest owners are all, they vary. Not only do they vary in size, but they vary in terms of their ability and their own capability to understand, uptake, and then implement the results from this program. We certainly regard the stakeholders as being broader than just forest owners. We certainly include the government in that, regional councils, advisors to the industry who do provide advice to forest owners, and our contractor workforce are a critical part of it, because they are the ones who actually do things out in our forests. The structure that's been put in place does involve a lot of people from across the industry, and they do play a very key role in helping direct the research and then interpreting it and then implementing it into their forests. And a bit quick add up, we think there's somewhere around there's probably between 50 and 60 people involved in our various boards and steering committees and governance groups for that program of work that we put up there before. So big thanks to all of those industry people that give up their time and probably end up doing a lot of their day job at night to ensure that they do make this contribution to the industry. So in terms of, just in terms of how do we sort of, I suppose, get input? We work pretty hard to get input from the industry. They play a key role because we've got to do the right research. So we've got to make sure we engage with researchers to ensure that research is pointed in the right direction and that we are delivering the results in a form that end users can understand and apply in their business. And undoubtedly, I just noted there, undoubtedly some of the less formal communication methods, sometimes they're probably the most effective, but an important part of the process. Of course, one of the most effective ways of communicating our research programs is to get people out into the field and demonstrate activities in the field. So we would normally, we throughout the course of the year, we run a number of field trips and demonstrations. And in fact, we've got one next week looking at extraction of slash from a recently developed grapple to get some of this harvest slash out of some of our more difficult waterways and some of our more challenging territory. And those are usually very well attended. People really like to see that stuff out working on the ground and understanding how it applies to their forests. So without the communication of these research results, so I say to people, we employ a lot of scientists, but we don't actually get the return on investment unless all of you are picking this work up and actually making some changes out in your forest that mean you either make more money or you're managing your operations in a safer or a more sustainable way. I suppose the other way of communicating are published papers, reports and newsletters. The one thing science does do is create a lot of papers and reports, and whilst the published papers in journals, scientific journals, they are a critical part of the science process, and we get that, we understand that. We also are very well aware that they're generally not read by the people out in the forest who actually have to implement and put these things. Some will, but the majority don't. So a big job is to get our researchers to also write articles for more popular magazines such as the Tree Grower, the Institute of Forestry Journal, the New Zealand Logger, publications like that are more widely read, and they're an important part of communicating the message. Of course, we also put out an annual report, and the latest annual report is in your bag, and we put out regular newsletters to communicate the outcomes from these programs to the end users. So, and we have John Elgard here, who's been a very strong supporter of reporting on these science programs in the Logger magazine. So we thank John for that. And Julian Beetson, of course. Julian, I think, is here too from the Tree Grower, because that is an important means of communication. We also, I suppose we've also worked pretty hard to get electronic newsletters out there. People do prefer the electronic means of getting information out these days. Social media is, we are trying on that. We've tried LinkedIn to try and spread our base and use that to communicate more widely. But I suppose one of the things we have also become aware of is that we're all overloaded with digital communications, and you can reach a point where actually they just get deleted by people because the inbox is full. We all go away, come back, and the inbox has got 50 emails in it, and first thing you probably do is go through and get rid of the newsletters and get on to the more important stuff. So, that's not the answer. You do have to manage that quite carefully and ensure that you don't get into a situation where that is happening. And then conferences, of course, we run an annual conference, and we're here today for this year's conference, where we highlight the outcomes from the research program. And certainly in recent years, these have been very well attended, and the feedback has been that it's a great way to get an update on a comprehensive program of work, and generally considered to be pitched at the right level for our industry people. And over the next 2 days, you're going to hear about the work that we've completed over the last year. And at this conference, a couple of large programs are coming to an end, and we're going to report fully on those, particularly our growing confidence in forestry's future, and that's a feature of today's program, and that will be run by Cyan. That's their session today. And then finally, I just want to put a plug in for the website that is maintained. You can access this by going into the Forest Growers Levy Trust, clicking on the research area, or the Forest Owners website, and it will take you through to the Forest Growers Research website. And that's got a very extensive list of publications and reports. It's got all of the old cooperative reports going right back to the late 80s. It's got all of the reports that came out of the former LERO, Logging Industry Research Organisation, again dating back to the 80s. So you can access all of that information from that website. So we encourage you, if you are looking for something, there is a search capability on that website, so we encourage you, if you're looking for information, to go and use that. We also know that websites tend to be more passive. You only go to a website if you actually are looking for something. So we try to use the website as a repository for all of the reports and technical notes that come out of these programs, but link people to those through our newsletters and social media sort of updates on programs. So, thank you. That's all I have to say on the program, and we look forward to the next 2 days of presentations.